start the show.
We living in color, y'all. Welcome to We Live in Color, right here on Converge Media. I am your host, Deaunte Damper, pronouns he, him, his. Now, before we begin with the show, remember to like, share, and subscribe to Converge Media. I know you loved our guest for our season opener, Randy Ford, but this week, you're gonna love this guest even more. When we talk about community access, when we talk about legacy, when we talk about liberation, we can only be talking about one man. The amazing Jermell Witherspoon, right here with us today on We Live in Color. How you doing, brother?
I am well. How are you?
I am blessed.
Good, good.
When I'm talking to a pastor, I just kind of have to slip. I am blessed. No, I'm blessed. I am blessed to have you in the space, and you have been an amazing guest on A Day with Trey twice, and I knew I had to have you be a guest on the show today, right? And we talk so much about liberation and navigating through community.
Yeah.
Can you tell community a little bit more about your position?
Well, I am a pastor. Actually, I have a couple churches in the city. I pastor a church in Bellevue called, I'm actually the pastor of education at a church in Bellevue called Common Good. I also am the senior pastor of Liberation United Church of Christ, a radically progressive. We are dog near a Pentecostal at this point in time in our dispensation, Black, predominantly queer church full of people who love God and love people.
And I love that you have been able to create that space. And anyone that knows the legacy of your community, right? You grew up in that space, right? So tell us a little bit more about growing up as a church kid. Most of us grew up as church kids, but you come from this long, wonderful legacy of people walking with God.
Yeah, you know, I go back to the queerness of our beings, right? I grew up as a church kid. I grew up in the midst of legacy and lineage, and I grew up amongst a people who were engulfed in the beauty of what they saw and engulfed in the beauty of what could not be seen, engulfed in mystery, engulfed in the love of one another, the love of God, engulfed in the beauty of community. I grew up amongst a people who at one point in time were called holy rollers, right? People who were made fun of sometimes for the conviction that they had from their God and the outward displaying of their God's love that came in, that was displayed and brought forth through their bodies, through their jumping, through their running, through their yelling, through their crying. I come from a people who deeply, deeply seek and have been seekers of what and who God was. And I am just living that out in ways that I think are most fruitful to my being and to those who I love.
Yeah. And what church was that? Because I mean, I know what church, but like I just remember as children here, right? And me and Eric, shout out to Eric, we talked about a lot like how navigating through community, there was no social media. When there was calls to actions, they happened a lot in the church. A lot of our pastors and the people that work there, shout out to anybody that's working in any areas of church. But what church did you attend, and how were you navigating that as a youth?
Yeah, so you know, there are actually a couple different spaces that were my family's churches, that are my family's churches in the area. But my particular church growing up in was Mount Calvary Christian Center, Church of God in Christ, on 23rd and Union. Yeah, a place where I learned how to love God deeply and radically. And I learned the importance of loving my neighbor. And I learned to seek God. And from that space of seeking, I learned spaces within myself that longed for more. And I found spaces within myself wherein I questioned, and from that seeking, I was given such beautiful grace to seek the more. And so I'm so grateful for that time and dispensation of time wherein I could seek and love and find. And I'm grateful for this time that God has brought me into of exploration.
Yeah, and that's amazing, right? While we do go into church, I don't know about you, but when I was growing up in the church, I was called a tambourine player.
Oh God, we know what that
I was a part of everything in church, right?
Yeah.
So did you ever go through any of that type of church hurt? I mean, we can kind of unpack what church hurt looks like, but did you ever go through any of that while attending church?
Let's give it a little context for those who don't know.
What is church hurt?
He was a tambourine player.
Yes.
That means his wrists were unstable.
Yeah. They were praising God.
Right. Though they were praising God, right, there was still something in his cadence. There was still something in who he was. There was a queerness, right, that would cause people to honor and love his gifts, but also talk about him, I'm sure, behind his back. This is the church as well, the beautiful, life-giving, amazing church I just spoke of, not just the building, but the organization, but the church that we have made and that we have brought into our sphere of being, that church that can be richly life-giving and can be deeply depleting, hurtful, and can actually take life as well.
Yeah.
Just for a little context, you're a tambourine player. There's so much to that, right? Yeah. So to your question, am I a tambourine player? I played the hell out of a tambourine. As a queer man growing up in the church, as a tambourine player, as one whose wrists were never straight enough.
Yeah.
I have experienced, I've experienced what I felt was this way of being ostracized and this way of being cast out, just as much as I felt this way of being loved and cherished and honored. There were people who walked in the spaces that I walked who didn't understand and who were not willing to understand. And so because of the context by which they were socialized in, they said things and they did things that were ignorant. They were assholes. Mm-hmm. And some of them were just as much of an asshole as they were someone who I depended on to love me because they were my community, someone who I knew loved me deeply, but who just could not shake ignorance and who just could not dive a little deeper, right, into what the Spirit was calling them to, which is the love of God that surpasses all of even what they thought were our frailties and our issues.
What did that do to young Jermell? Not speaking of now, right?
Yeah.
What did that do to the young Jermell?
It isolated me.
Yeah.
It built my relationship with God because that was the only person, and my grandmother really, right, who I actually felt comfortable enough with to actually give myself to. I was an isolated, but I would go to, it brought me to prayer meetings. It brought me to the altar. Right? At one point, it brought me to prayer meetings and to the altar because I knew, and I thought that I knew, I should say, that there was something wrong with this tambourine player, right? That there was an issue, that there was something that was counter God, that there was something that was abominable in me because of who God had called me to be. But all the while, God kept calling me.
Yeah.
And God didn't call me as one who needed to succumb to what people thought that I should be. God called me as the beautiful tambourine playing queer boy who loved carrying his grandmother's purse behind her, right? Who indeed was her shadow, as she said. One who did not necessarily play football but sung in the choir. One who embodied and embraced the outward representation of the Spirit on me that caused my shoulders to shimmy a little bit more. That brought out even some of the feminine energy in me that the women of the church taught me how to pray and how to live and how to love. And so those were some of the best times and most loneliest times of my life.
And finding the joy behind, after the rain, is what I appreciate the work that you do so much. And then when we come back, we are going to talk more about when he got the call to liberation and to more things. You're watching We Live in Color.
importance to share the history of the Buffalo Soldiers of Seattle and Buffalo Soldiers of everywhere, including cowboys and cowgirls of color everywhere, is really important because most likely they're forgotten. It's important that they're acknowledged, especially for girls like me who look up to them.
At a rodeo, it's got an impact on people when they see somebody doing something like that, especially a person of color, you know what I mean? It's got a big impact on people, I think.
Representing the Evergreen State, I am your Miss Teen Rodeo Washington, Jessa Thomas. Welcome to the Windswept Farm.
Looking for laughs? Looking for love? Fast Talking Figaro has got you covered. Toe-tapping melodies, lively staging, and colorful costumes. Don't miss The Barber of Seville, May 4th through 19th at McCall Hall. Tickets at seattleopera.org. Ballet's greatest comedy, Coppelia, returns to Pacific Northwest Ballet. Perfect for all ages, Coppelia delights with dazzling dancing and magnificent music played by the PNB Orchestra. Seven performances only. Visit pnb.org for tickets.
Hello, welcome to Elite Insights with Carlos Imani. We're looking to offer an in-depth look at event production industry through the lens of client experiences and joint successes. The podcast will emphasize guest interviews, focusing on client, discussing their fields, and reflecting on their collaboration with Elite Collective. Again, you're with Elite Insights. Carlos Imani here. I'll see you guys in a few.
And we're back with We Live in Color. I'm here with Pastor Jermell Witherspoon. And we were just talking about walking in our truth.
Yeah.
Walking in our light.
Yeah.
Because that's who we are. How you said that you were going through the areas of depression. How did you pull yourself out of that and walk into, we say the call, right? When people are called to come into ministry. How did you get your call?
You know, I'm not sure that I was depressed.
Okay.
I was alone. And I'm not even sure that I was alone. I was almost set apart. And oftentimes, when we use that verbiage, set apart, right? We use that verbiage as one, right, who is doing something that others can't, right? We have this exclusive way of being in the church that almost gets us off. This set apart, this way of being that says, I am something that someone else is not. But for me, being set apart was being able to live into this idea that I belong to God. Every part of me. We used to sing a song that says, I'm yours, Lord. Everything I am, everything I'm not. I'm yours, Lord. Try me out and see if I can truly be completely yours. I was a young child who loved his grandmother, who was her shadow, and outside of her, who really loved his God. I didn't know all the intricate details, but what I did know is that the God who folks told me had an issue with the full me, right? We talked about earlier, the church has so many micro and macro aggressions, right? Because though there is this idea that, you know, that we all are forgiven and that we all have grace, and at some point in time, I felt like I fell under that grace, right? That grace that says, oh, you can be queer, you can be, right? There's grace for that too, because somebody else is a thief, right? And another person is a murderer. That didn't stick for me. And very early on, I had to shut down the idea that I was sinful.
Yeah.
That my love, that my life, that my risks, that because I played the tambourine a little different than the other little boys, that there was something that was unnatural about me. And me being alone, with my God showed me that I was made in her image. And me being made in his image, right, showed me that there must have been more that I needed to seek of them in order for me to really see the truth of how I wanted to navigate my spirituality. There was never a time where I did not think that I would be doing this work for God, however the work was to be done. There was never a time where I thought that my sexuality, at one point in time, it wasn't even really sexuality, right? Because I wasn't really thinking about sex. I was just being me. But there was never a time, even when I grew into sexuality and the differences that I displayed as a growing boy, there was never a time where I felt separated from God. There were times where church people made me feel some type of way because they were so hyper diligent about the way that I acted and the way that I needed to act, right? Until they needed me to do something in service or in church, or needed me to do something, right, that would uplift the church that I was a part of, or, you know what I mean? It was interesting that people they'll ostracize you and they'll villainize you until they need you to help build their empire.
Wow.
This is just in general.
Right. Mm-hmm. And did that happen often? Did you feel like you could be the person in church, but you couldn't be yourself? Could you be the same person you were outside of church, inside of church?
Well, gifts come early.
Okay.
People know your gifts early.
I love that.
You know?
Yeah.
They knew my gifts early. I wasn't ever really concerned or wanted to be a different person inside of church than I had to be outside of church. That's why I had to get to a space where I could be the fullness of who I was. Because what I knew was that if I was going to worship God, and if I was going to be true to God, that I would have to do it, as the scripture says, in spirit and in truth.
I know that line. See, I've been going to church
Period.
for a while. Okay.
I knew that I couldn't do it outside of the truth of who I was, because I knew that the truth of who I was why I was called in the first place. I didn't know the intricate details, but I knew that I could not do this work without me.
Right.
Oftentimes we're taught in church that we put ourselves down at the door and then we come and do the work. But God is not our pimp. God does not require to take all that we have from us, right? Leave the intricate parts of us at the door and then work us until there's nothing left. The church, though, they will work us until there is nothing left. They will use our gifts, they will use our time, they will use our talents, and then they will send us home thinking that we are going to burn in hell.
Yeah. And as you've been on your journey, now in the space, devoted preacher in community, you know, you come from a legacy of family members that have been in the church for years.
Yeah.
How do they feel about you preaching?
You know, nobody has been able to deny the call of God on my life, though there are a few who cannot really stomach the way by which God is doing God's work. But there are not many who deny. And honestly, there are not many who are against what I do. You know, we are minoritized people, but we are not the minority. Even as Black people, as queer people, right? As women, as folks who have been pushed to the margins. We are not. We are the global majority. It's much like that in our spaces of spirituality in church. Most people don't actually believe what the pastor says that is dogmatic, because they live lives with people that would cause them to love people so much that in the public, there's a way by which you're supposed to handle yourself with people.
Yeah.
In the public, people are not supposed to like me, or they're not supposed to affirm my ministry because I'm gay, because I'm same gender loving, because I'm this, because I'm that. But in private, I'm continuing to get inboxes saying, even from my old spaces, that there are people that they are sending to me because they know I will love them in ways that their space that they're in could never. Because they understand the call of God. Our working theology, how we walk life, is often different, especially in those spaces where we have to socialize ourselves as something that we're not. Our working theology often is different than what we say we believe. How we actually walk out life is different, because when I love you, then your queerness looks a little different to me on an everyday basis than it does when there's somebody in the pulpit saying that all queer folks are going to burn in hell. Because I know you, and I can't imagine you going to hell. And a God who would send you to hell, then I have to start questioning. But then when you ask questions, especially in our traditional church spaces that are unlearned, often you get answers that are angry, answers that are ignorant, because often they can't explain to you what their feeling is, because their feeling is actually not one that's backed up by what is truth.
And I love that. And I think that that's what you've been able to the love that you're able to spread to community members is exactly that. What is truth? And I think a lot of the truth is love that you've been able to do. And I want to talk to you a little bit more about liberation, about the events that you have coming up in the comings of months, but above all else, like the community access that your church is giving to community. Reminds me of the old city. And we'll unpack that in just a second. You're watching We Live in Color.
Africatown Plaza is our latest affordable housing development project. It's 126 units of affordable housing over community commercial space.
It's the first time in my career, and I've been doing this for 10 years, that I was able to design for people who look like me.
Africatown Plaza is a beacon of hope.
Africatown Plaza is a love letter to the community.
One in every 500 African Americans in the U.S. suffers from sickle cell disease. 1 in 3 African American blood donors is a match for patients with sickle cell. 1 appointment to donate blood with the American Red Cross can help save a life. Will you be that one? Visit redcrossblood.org/ourblood today to schedule an appointment at a location near you.
Here on Back to Vesa, it's always been important to me that we uplift stories from across the region, and that no matter where you live in the nation, you never have to miss a moment of the show as we continue to highlight the beauty, excellence, and resilience of our communities across the Pacific Northwest. Why? Because representation matters. So no matter where you live, be it the Central District or Centralia, Portland or Pullman, or anywhere across the country, I encourage you to join me on this Back to Vesa journey by downloading the free Fox Local app on your phone or smart TV as we continue to elevate the very best in our communities.
Looking for laughs? Looking for love? Fast Talking Figaro has got you covered. Toe-tapping melodies, lively staging, and colorful costumes. Don't miss The Barber of Seville, May 4th through 19th at McCall Hall. Tickets at seattleopera.org.
And we're back with We Live in Color, and I'm here with Pastor Jermell Witherspoon. You're taking us to church. You're not even doing that, right? But as I'm asking you, I mean, you're not doing it purposely. It is just like, I'm feeling like I'm at church here, okay? I think that being able to give community members that love, that empowerment, in your word, I've been to your church. Can you tell us about Liberation Church?
Yeah, let me just name this before I go into that my church is not only for my community, my church is for me.
Okay.
I don't just serve a community of ostracized people and people who've been cast aside in so many ways. I am a me who has been ostracized and cast aside in many ways. And I see people in ways that I know that I also need to be seen. And so Liberation is a place for those who have been underestimated, for those who have felt like that they could not find spiritual asylum for those who have been in spaces where they have been hurt, have been in spaces where they are even working now through the PTSD that comes with being in some of these spaces. It is for people who are free. It is for people who are bound. It is for people who are gay. It is for people who are straight. It is for people who are black. It is for people who are white. It is for people who understand the experiences of being people. And we have these people now, we center ourselves, right, in those who are furthest away from opportunity, who have been ostracized in some of the deepest of ways. And we name that, even in our bylaws and in what we do. So yes, liberation is a place where everybody is welcome, no matter who you are or where you are in life's journey, you are welcome. And we do center things like Black bodies. And we do center, right, things like folks of queer experience, whatever that looks like. And when I say queer, I mean people who are counter-dominant society, which is so many of us, right? Especially considering that we're in a world where dominance looks a certain way in church. It looks a certain way. The way that things are supposed to be are certain ways. And so that's kind of who we are at Liberation.
And that you are, right? Mm-hmm. Me and Eric actually attended during Black Pride weekend. Yeah. You did an amazing ceremony. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. Yeah, so
I'm getting ready to shed some tears because I just think about that moment, and it just such a healing experience for all of us.
Yeah, we did a ceremony honoring folks of trans experience. And what we did was we did a name-changing ceremony to honor who God had called them to be and honor them walking into the fullness of who they are. The truth of the matter is we are all walking through an experience where we are just trying to get to our best selves. That is one of the gifts of God, that God would give us the ability to walk into our best, even in systems that sometimes try to hold us down. And so we wanted to honor these folks of trans experience. And we say that we as the Church of Jesus Christ honor you. We apologize for how we've mishandled you. We honor you for the names that is now your name, right? And we say this is who God honors you as. Your dead name is not being honored in heaven, right? The name that you have been given by the divine presence that now has called you into another dispensation of life. This is who honors you. And we bless God for you. And we wanted them to know that they are free to operate in our ministry as who God has called them to be, as who they are. They are free to be in our space. They are free to hold leadership roles in our space, right? As who God has called them to be, as the beautiful queer folk that God have called them to be.
And I love that because one of my friends that attends your church, I've just watched her flourish and shine. I've watched her love on community members, and I think that that's a seed that you plant within your church.
Yeah.
With all of the members. 3 of them will be guests on the show later on this season. And I think it comes from a lot of the love and the healing that you've been able to embody in your in the church movement, in the movement of people walking along with God.
Yeah, and to God be the glory. Yeah. God is gracious and God is kind. Mm-hmm. And God is God. And God uses us to be the vessels in the earth of God. And I just want to be a vessel that is well used.
Yeah. And one of the things that we did on the first season, and I want to make sure that we continue to respect that here, is we live in color tributes, right?
Yeah.
Who we are and why we are also because of these people.
Yeah.
Who is your person?
I would say Mother Almeda Witherspoon, my grandmother, who taught me how to be a loving, gracious, kind person, who taught me how to embody the love of Christ, because living with her, being at her hip, I saw all the facets of her, and I always saw her be kind, and I always saw her be loving, and I always saw her defend people in the church, often people who were queer. And I know that she also was in spaces where she, was in a system. And so I know how she worried about me because she knew who I was, growing up in a system that wouldn't always honor me. And so I appreciate the beauty that she's given me. And one of the hardest things was when she passed for me. But I also realized that I don't know if I would be who I am, and if I would have pursued all that God had called me to pursue, if I had to do it with her around, because some of it she wouldn't have understood. And I thank God for her life, and I thank God that God was able to position me in a space wherein there was no distraction. Not that she was a distraction, right? But that there was nothing standing in the way of me actually going forward and pursuing what God had called me to do, that I was not afraid or fearful or worried about hurting her. Yeah. That she now is amongst the greater cloud of witnesses that understands that I have to do what God has called me to, and that is now cheering me on from a different space in time and consciousness.
So, and we lift her up.
And we lift her
in legacy.
Amita
Witherspoon.
Amita Witherspoon.
And we lift you up.
Thank you.
And I know that you are lifting community members up. So we do want to do a call to action for community members to be able to know where Liberation Church is, who you are, and where people can find you. Can you look in that camera right there and let them know? Right, that one.
That one. So my name is Jermell Witherspoon. I pastor Liberation United Church of Christ, 832 32nd Avenue, Seattle, Washington, 98122. 2 o'clock every Sunday. You can find us there. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Facebook, Liberation United Church of Christ. You can also go to our website, mylucc.org. Come see us, come see us, come see us. We are waiting on you.
I love you.
I love you.
I thank you so much for what you do for community. And I thank you so much for being a friend.
Yes.
And I thank you for being a person that prays for this community.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to have you back. Yeah. You are a part of the Community Compass, and I appreciate you.
And thank you for praying for me, community.
Okay, yeah, okay, though. Period.
The importance to share the history of the Buffalo Soldiers of Seattle and Buffalo Soldiers of everywhere, including cowboys and cowgirls of color everywhere, is really important because most likely they're forgotten. It's important that they're acknowledged, especially for girls like me who look up to them.
At a rodeo, it's got an impact on people when they see somebody doing something like that, especially a person of color, you know what I mean? It's got a big impact on people, I think.
Representing the Evergreen State, I am your Miss Teen Rodeo Washington, Jessa Thomas. Welcome to the Windswept Farm.
Looking for laughs? Looking for love? Fast Talking Figaro has got you covered. Toe-tapping melodies, lively staging, and colorful costumes. Don't miss The Barber of Seville, May 4th through 19th at McCall Hall. Tickets at seattleopera.org. Ballet's greatest comedy, Coppelia, returns to Pacific Northwest Ballet. Perfect for all ages, Coppelia delights with dazzling dancing and magnificent music played by the PNB Orchestra. Seven performances only. Visit pnb.org for tickets.
Hello, welcome to Elite Insights with Carlos Imani. We're looking to offer an in-depth look at event production industry through the lens of client experiences and joint successes. The podcast will emphasize guest interviews, focusing on client, discussing their fields, and reflecting on their collaboration with Elite Collective. Again, you're with Elite Insights. Carlos Imani here. See you guys in a few.
I want to thank my wonderful guest, Pastor. We love you. Thank you so much for guiding community. Thank you so much for being community healer. I'm so grateful to call you friend.
I love you as well.
into community. Thank you for coming to this episode of We Live in Color. For next week, we'll be talking to another community healer, Jalen Scott, Executive Director of Lavender Rights Project. You are watching We Live in Color. Good night. Hey everybody, Deaunte Damper. To learn more about our blog posts, community events, and more, go to whereweconverge.com.